It has to be one of the world's most mysterious, most macabre disappearances of a group of people. 10 years since 43 Mexican students vanished. Since then, botched investigations amid intense levels of corruption exposed. It was in September 2014 that the young trainee teacher studying at a college known for its history of radical left-wing activism went missing. As was local tradition, they'd commandeered several buses to travel to a commemoration protest in Mexico City. Police, though, set up roadblocks and fired on them. 6 people, 3 of them students, were killed, including one whose mutilated body was found the next day. The other 43, they were never seen alive again.
As parents, we won't stop until we find our children. We asked the government to bring them back alive because they were taken alive. It's our goal, and we will go all the way. We hold the government accountable because we know that they're linked to the traffickers.
The official version says the students were handed over by corrupt officers to a drug gang, Guerreros Unidos. Their bodies then burnt and thrown into a stream. That, though, has been proven to be false by scientific evidence. And indeed, it was shown that all those who'd self-incriminated themselves in telling the story had been tortured. Since then, many other police and military personnel, also high-level officials, have been accused of crimes many relatives believe in a full cover-up. Tens of thousands of people have gone missing during the drug wars in Mexico, but it is the case of the 43 that still enrages people. Laurence Cuvillier and Matthieu Comin with Ed Augustin revisit the missing Mexican students for France 24.
Almost 10 years. 10 years of coming every month, tirelessly, to the Zócalo, Mexico City's central square, and asking the same question: where are the 43 students?
Once again, the only thing we want to know is, where are our children? They took them alive.
It's January, and Maria has been camping here for a week with parents and students from rural teacher training schools. They've come from all over the country in solidarity.
We're cold, we're not eating well. Sometimes we don't sleep. But for us, the most important thing is that one day we learn the truth.
Maria's son, José Eduardo, was just 19 when he disappeared.
Revolución como Ayotzinapa, revolución como las normales, como las madres y padres de familia y nuestros camaradas. Y me siguen acá, por favor.
These families came to demand a meeting with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Despite demonstrating for several days, he won't receive them.
On the 26th of September 2014, our children were chased by the local police, the state police, the federal police, and also the army. We know that the army took some of those students away, but when investigators tried to find out what the army did that night, they were blocked.
A group of independent investigators reported that several hundred documents have gone missing from the army's records. The role the military played that night is still the investigation's central question. But the president denies any documents are missing.
Despite what the manipulative media may say, the important thing here is to have a clear conscience. We published everything. The army has released all the documents it had.
Over the years, people have lost confidence in the authorities' handling of the case. This video, for example, shows a former police officer suspected of having helped kidnap the students, being tortured by investigators. According to a UN commission, at least 34 suspects have been tortured, making their testimonies legally invalid. The remains of 3 students have been identified, but there's confusion about where exactly their bodies were found. Over time, relations between the families of the disappeared and the government have deteriorated. Exasperated students smashed a van through a door of the National Palace this March, while the president was giving his daily press conference. The video is regularly repeated in the media, fueling hatred against students, especially on social media.
I say these terrorist schools should be eradicated.
They should disappear. 50 more of them. What a load of shameless delinquents.
Estudiantes de la normal de Ayotzinapa bloqueaban la autopista del Sol.
In a country racked by daily violence, the students in Mexico's 16 rural teacher training schools are often criticized for resorting to excessive and radical methods. But it's thanks to these schools that some of the poorest people in the country can get an education. It's 7 in the morning at the school in Ayotzinapa. First-year students prepare to clean the courtyard, under the eyes of Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, but also their 43 missing comrades. Gustavo is 20 years old. He enrolled a few months ago.
We're used to it. Getting up at 6 and starting work early, that's how we've grown up. This rhythm isn't hard for us. We've been doing it at home all our lives.
The second of 4 brothers and sisters, Gustavo was born into a very poor family. He started work at the age of 14 as a builder. The teacher training school was the only way he could study.
The main idea behind the rural teacher training schools is to allow peasants and poor people to study and lift their families out of poverty.
Free studies and accommodation, and 3 square meals a day.
It might not seem like much, but it's very important. I have several friends who only ate once or twice a day before they came here.
Becoming a teacher and helping his family. That was also Jose Eduardo's dream.
I'm cleaning these cosmetics, these perfumes, and these containers. I sell them to make a modest living.
Maria is a street vendor. Together with her husband, she earns just enough to get by.
It was so hard when my son disappeared. I was ill at the time. I had cancer. And I told him, my son, find a school where you can study, because I can't help you financially. I'm sick, your father works, but it barely pays for my treatments.
She spends several days a month protesting to pressure the government. The rest of the time, she works hard just to cover their basic needs.
I have this mother-of-pearl cream. It's worth 5 or 6 euros, but it's on sale. I'm selling it for 3 euros. Are you interested? Sometimes I sell, sometimes not. Every penny counts. Hello, Mr. Perez. Do you need shampoo? It's just come in, and it's on sale.
Yes, okay.
Okay, I'll bring it to you.
Her husband, Cornelio, works in construction. The disappearance of Jose Eduardo turned the couple's lives upside down, but they've stayed together.
I work full-time, and she goes to protests. It's important because we can't allow the government to drop the case without finding out what happened.
A decade without news, and yet Maria still believes her son could be alive.
A few days after he disappeared, I had a dream. I saw my son in a dark room. I couldn't quite make out where he was. But I saw he was smiling at me. That's what keeps me going. With his smile, he asked me not to worry. But of course I worry. I always pray to God that wherever he is, he doesn't go hungry. We think about him and the others all the time.
At the teacher training school in Ayotzinapa, the number 43 is everywhere. Gustavo was barely 10 years old at the time.
I was a child, and so I didn't really understand what had happened. I only understood when I was older, and I started to feel angry. But this could be a wake-up call for Mexican society, because it reminds us that when the government wants to, it can simply silence voices it doesn't like.
In the rural teacher training schools, as well as academic classes, students raise animals and work the fields with rustic tools. They're trained to work in poor, isolated regions. In this morning's classes, the students talk about their first immersive training to be primary school teachers.
There are a lot of conflicts in this village, and in the end, this affects the children. Violence gets normalized and transmitted from adults to children, and so having educational materials is very important to bring them together and get them to play together.
You need to know this context well, because it will have a big impact on the child's school results.
Where I was, in the community of Tecuanapa, the main problem was the river water. It was very polluted. The children themselves told me they threw their rubbish into the river.
43% of the Mexican population lives below the poverty line. Without the education provided by rural teacher training schools, thousands of Mexican villages would go without teachers.
I didn't like the life I had. I worked from 6 or 7 in the morning until 8 at night, and barely ate throughout the day. I think it's unfair, and if I graduate from this school, I'd like to go to remote areas and try to change things there. To teach children to analyze their situations and think critically.
Guerrero, where the Ayotzinapa school is located, is one of the poorest states in Mexico. A state where drug cartels are fighting a merciless war against each other. Alejandro, who studied at the school, has worked as a teacher in a hamlet for 12 years. He does what he can to keep his students in class.
I have 12 students, but for various reasons, it's very rare that they're all in class. Some parents take them to work, others cannot feed them enough, some children get ill, with lung infections, for example. Today, there are only 8 kids in class. Here, mobile phones have no signal. We can't make calls. The Electricity Commission has only just installed internet for us, but it rarely works.
With a salary of around 500 euros per month, he sometimes shares his meal with students who come to school on an empty stomach.
I've always said, studying at the Ayotzinapa Teacher Training School has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I've learned to fight, to live, to survive, and also to share.
Months go by, and Mexico elects a new president. Claudia Sheinbaum, López Obrador's appointed successor.
Me comprometo a que no les voy a defraudar.
The third administration since the students' disappearance. Somewhere between weariness and hope, students continued to demonstrate on the 26th of every month.
Do you have hope that the next government will solve the case?
Honestly, no. I can't trust any government on this. No government tells the truth. They just create smokescreens.
Young students today are fighting to stop the case of the 43 from falling into oblivion. They fight, just as they always have done, with what they have. Their voices, their demonstrations, and their guitars.
Laurence Cuvillier and Matthieu Comin with Ed Augustin revisiting the missing Mexican students for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. You can catch it and all the other editions as well on our website at france24.com. Thanks for watching.